You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
Hi, it's Jonathan Cotton with the Good Feet Store, and you know what time of year it is? It's back to school time, and time once again for all of those after-school activities. Whether it's ballet or football, drama or field hockey, band or basketball, kids' feet need to feel good. Those cleats, sneakers, or shoes for band often don't do those young feet any favors. If our kids are going to stay active and healthy, then they need good feet. That means it's also time to take your kids to the Good Feet Store. Yeah, that's right, the young ones, the kids. Bring them into the Good Feet Store and let's treat them to some personal service. Our team members will measure their feet and find the right arch support for them. They can still wear the shoes they want, but they will have the support to make them comfortable now and keep their feet healthy for the future. It won't take long, and it could change their life. Go to goodfeet.com to make an appointment or just stop by the location nearest you. The Good Feet Store.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
From Afghanistan to the Supreme Court. Overnight, what can only be considered to be an attack on Roe versus Wade. We'll discuss the contradictions coming from a party that claims to be the party of life, that have directly contributed to the deaths of 630,000 people in the wake of COVID-19. Let's discuss those contradictions. But first, On the Clock with Georgia Ford.
It's been 1 week since the fatal shooting of Antoine Gilmore. He was killed by D.C. police. He fell asleep at a car at a stoplight. And in the process of officers trying to wake him up, things went terribly wrong. Now, there has been continuous protests in D.C. over Gilmore's death, some of which I was able to witness and document while I was in D.C. over the weekend for the March on Washington. The interesting thing is seeing the intersection of people from Minneapolis standing in solidarity with those in D.C. who are advocating for the same thing that so many people in Minneapolis did after George Floyd, and that's police accountability. One of those people who was standing in solidarity was Winston Smith's brother. We talked about Winston Smith probably more on this show than any national media outlet. Smith was killed by a U.S. Marshal, and his brother traveled to D.C. for the march as well. I was actually on the plane with him and sat next to him. We spoke extensively about where his brother's case is, but he was reminded that night of just how much further this nation has to go on police accountability. I want you guys to take a listen to an interview, a piece of an interview that Winston Smith's brother did with Chuck Mariano. Take a listen.
I came out here to spread the word, you know what I'm saying? The U.S. Marshals killed my brother Winston, as you may know. And they have done, they've done a decent job of covering his name up, There's a lot of people that don't even know that he was killed. And it's only been like 2 months. Right. So I'm like, look, we don't have the luxury of a video that's worldwide like George Floyd did. A lot of people don't, a lot of us don't. But with his in particular, they made sure that to the best of their ability, they wanted to cover it up.
Yeah.
And now I feel like it's my job to get out here and uncover that. So.
And for people who don't know, where was Winston Smith killed?
Minneapolis, Minnesota, in uptown Minneapolis, Minnesota. He got killed at the top of a parking ramp. He was eating at Stella's. He posted on his Instagram that he was eating, and
I've been screaming and crying.
There was multiple scenarios he could have been arrested. So, you know, people will question, like, actually people haven't questioned and need to question, why didn't they arrest him when he was at Stella's? Because they knew he was there.
Right.
You know, I don't want to say too much to jeopardize the case, but he could have been arrested down at Stella's, but they waited until he got into the car and then attempted to arrest him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And I'm led to believe that was, of course, that's false. Because if you look up studies on U.S. Marshals Task Force and how they work, the one that got sent out to him was the North Star Task Force.
Yeah.
They're not known to actually make arrests. They're known to shoot first.
Right.
So there we have Cadell Smith, the brother of Winston Smith Ben. This brings back up the issue of police accountability, which I know we covered extensively following the Chauvin trial. And, you know, there were times it felt like even on our show where we continued to talk about this issue. It's a pressing issue while mainstream media was moving on to cover Trump and, you know, other stories. But this is still a problem. In DC, Antoine Gilmore just 1 week ago was killed by police. The footage on that case has been released, but, you know, we have to wait to see whether or not their use of force will be justified.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking of this brother on the screen now, how he's having to cope with the death of his brother, along with fighting against a system of systemic oppression that actually has to be confronted head on. But he's diagnosed it. While he's dealing with this grief, this brother has properly diagnosed a problem. The media outlets that control the narrative will not allow this story to break through so that there can be justice. And we will be surprised, because there's going to be an increasing amount of unfortunately shock that people are going to have in order for us to get the next step. If we're waiting on a video that is more tragic than George Floyd, if we're waiting on anything more to move us into action than what we've already seen, I am terrified of what is to come. And this is one of the things that this brother is talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I actually sat on the flight with Cadell Smith there, and he. Okay. My daughter, she has woken up. I don't know if you guys follow.
I didn't know it was my. I'm sorry, Georgia. I thought that was my baby because I was looking over here. So no, absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, anytime we start talking about these matters, she's the one who runs around the house screaming, "No justice, no peace." So I'm sure she wanted to chime in. But, you know, being on that flight with Cadell Smith, a 2-hour plane ride, and we spoke extensively about where his brother's case is. And, you know, the thing I think that frustrates him, what I gathered from the conversation, is that there hasn't been that same response.
That's right.
Right. That his brother was killed in the same city where George Floyd was killed. I mean, in driving distance, you're talking a matter of a 10, 12-minute drive.
Right.
And to see a sea of people come out and express their outrage and demand accountability for George Floyd. And I mean, at most, I think maybe there was 100 or 200 people who showed up for his brother. And the only difference is that footage, Ben, like you talked about. And so, you know, from hearing from him and hearing from so many other relatives, now here he's standing up for Antoine. So he's not even done grieving his brother's death. And he's trying to fight for justice for someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the tragedy. That's the compounding traumas upon traumas, right? We have people who have yet to even have the opportunity to bury or even properly grieve their loved ones who were killed by the police. And now they're having to go out and protest on behalf of someone else. And the degree of separation, right, is getting closer and closer and closer. You're seeing people related now who have had people killed by the police in common. And so there's these overlapping intercomplexities of trauma that is a direct result of a system that was designed to do exactly what it does to Black people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's disheartening. You know, I haven't looked at the Antoine Gilmore footage. I just can't. I am at a point where I just feel like I'm at capacity, and
That's right.
It's hard. It's hard to keep seeing this happen over and over again and no change.
That's right. And this is the difficult thing, Georgia. It is the requirement that people like you and I, and those of us who cover this on a regular basis, we, as much as it is traumatic to us because this is us, those are our brothers and sisters and non-gender conforming individuals. Those are our family members out there, even if it's just by extension of our shared blackness and extension of our survival of slavery or even colonialism. Those are our family members out there being killed. And yet we have the responsibility of challenging a system that would tell us that no, they were not killed by a police state. They were George Floyd actually killed by Derek Chauvin. He died of what? So they're desperate to control the narrative. And this is one of the things that this brother is trying to push back on.
Yeah. And, to have been there on the ground in DC and to have to go back, right? Because I covered so much of the unrest following George Floyd. I followed the unrest after Dalal Eid and Dante Wright, and to be at this place where it felt like our city was starting to be at peace. And then Winston Smith happened. And then to go to DC to cover the March on Washington, but instead, covering these protests. What more has to happen? What more has to happen before there truly is change on a legislative level, or even on a systematic level? When we look at policing, when you look at the system, we have several police departments in our country right now that are currently being investigated by the Department of Justice. Federal investigations that are looking at the patterns and the practices of these departments to analyze whether or not there is some type of discrimination that's happening in the way that they either execute their training or perform their duties. And the fact that the Department of Justice is even involved is a sign that there's an issue on a deeper level.
Yeah. And the insult to the injury of a good portion of our system trying to convince us that there's nothing wrong, to believe our lying eyes, right? Or not believe our lying eyes, rather, to look at 2 + 2 and not believe that it equals 4. They want us to look at this scenario and say that there absolutely couldn't be anything that's worthwhile investigating by the Department of Justice because there's something that is wrong with blackness. Like, I got to be sure. I want to just make one quick point here, right? There's something going on here. And I think we need to ask these conservatives or anyone who opposes the reform that we're demanding in the policing system to talk to us what they really believe is the cause, because we see a systemic problem. What is it that they see as a problem? And I think we can corner them to admitting that if they don't believe it's the police, then they believe it's something inherently wrong in our community. And that in itself is racist.
When I look at Antoine Gilmore, could you imagine falling asleep in your vehicle and then waking up and you're surrounded by police who have their guns drawn? What would you do in that situation? If you wake up and you're startled and all you see is men surrounding your vehicle with their gun drawn, what happens in that situation?
I don't know, but I do know a couple of people who experienced that. Breonna Taylor, Fred Hampton. This system has no compunction whatsoever, no hesitation about assassinating us in our sleep. I don't know what that's like, but unfortunately, too many Black people do.
Well, and it's similar to what happened with Cadell's brother, because he was getting ready to leave Stella's. You heard him talk about going out to eat at that restaurant, and he was parked in a parking ramp. He got in his car with the woman he had taken out to eat, and they were getting ready to leave, and his car was surrounded. And in that case, what I've been told is that they were not dressed in uniform. And so in Winston Smith's case, his car surrounded by people he's not even able to identify as police.
That's right. And of course they know they know the natural inclination is that you're going to defend yourself. And the moment you take the natural human response of reacting to protect yourself, they are going to say they felt that their lives were threatened and they pulled the trigger.
Right.
They create the scenario. Exactly.
Right. Fight or flight. And so Antoine Gilmore, when you break down, and I've only read the transcription of the footage for Antoine Gilmore, but he's in the car, he's unconscious, he comes to consciousness, he starts to drive. They ask him to stop, and so he stops. And then he drove again. And that's when they shot. So, you know, the thing after even 20 minutes of him being there unconscious, I'd like to believe that there would have been a different way to apprehend him if that's what they needed to do. But I mean, if your vehicle is surrounded with whether they're identified or unidentified cops with their guns drawn, there's going to be a element of fear that's going to play, you know. And so that they're just, someone asked me yesterday too, is like, well, what are your thoughts? Do you think the police should be reformed? Do you think that they should be defunded? And as a journalist, you know, it's not my job to share my opinion. It's my job to dig deep on both sides and find out what are the facts, what are the pros and the cons of both sides. But there's also a part of that conversation that I felt like was left out. When you speak to civil rights icon Angela Davis, who was around for the height of the civil rights fight, right? Mm-hmm. She talks about abolition. She talks about, and she compares the, you know, idea of police reform to the idea of slavery reform. She says back when there were people trying to figure out a better way to do slavery, there were people who honestly were advocating to reform slavery and not abolish it. They said, you know, it's not, I mean, if we just fix it, it can work for everybody. Right. But the system was doing what it was designed to do. And historically speaking, when you look at the police department, it was created to catch slaves. What else was it created to do? Who was it created by? It was founded largely by members of the KKK.
You know, Georgia, when you really contextualize this for the application of the police force over the years, the impact that it has had, right? I'm far beyond being convinced or even debating about the intention, because people like to gaslight you. Systems like to gaslight you. Politicians, most certainly, your local mayor included, would gaslight you and will tell you that there's nothing wrong with the system, right? But we have to look at the impact. They will say that there's nothing wrong with their intentions in the system, but the impact has been traumatic on Black communities, not only Black communities, but impoverished communities. Because let's be sure, the police presence in wealthy communities is more analogous to Mayberry, right? It's more analogous to Andy Griffith and the sheriff, right? The nice, friendly neighborhood officer, as opposed to the Gestapo that is in the Black community.
What concerns me, Ben, what frightens me, is that potentially, like, we're on track right now that we could wake up in 10 years and look back and still have the same police departments, still have the same issues, and nothing's changed. When you had an international protest behind the death of George Floyd, and we swore in our souls that something had to change, that something was going to change. But what, like, here we are today, more than a year, almost a year and a half later, and nothing's changed. Antoine Gilmore was killed 7 days ago, and there's no indictment. There's no charges that have been brought forth. I was reminded by our producer, David, that we have the footage of Antoine's death. Do we have to show that? Do we have to continuously show Black men being brutalized and killed on camera in order to get people to move into action? Is that what it takes? How many more people have to be killed by police before we decide to actually make tangible change? And so I am frightened. The path that we're on now and the type of inaction that we're seeing. Have you heard of Antoine Gilmore on national media outlets? No, absolutely not. They have bigger stories to cover. It's not important to them. But in 10 years, or within the span of 10 years, if it hits your backyard, if it ends up being your loved one, then you're going to be out here just like the people we saw in the B-roll protesting. You're going to be out here just like them, wishing that somebody would listen to you, wishing that one of these lawmakers would make the right vote.
It's funny how slow justice seems to move on behalf of Black people. But I want to qualify that, not justice, this system, the people who fancy themselves to be arbiters of justice. It's amazing how slow the wheels of justice turn for Black folks, as opposed to, let's say, tax breaks, how quickly they can get us into war and then how long they take to get us out, right? It's amazing what this system can get done when it wants to get something done. So why hasn't it got something done for Black people?
Well, I understand, Ben, you guys are going to be talking about this more later on. Can you give us just a preview maybe of what people can expect?
Yeah, Chuck Modiona, who has captured so many of these protests and has been an independent activist journalist on the streets of D.C. nonstop, because to be sure, the protests have never stopped. The media just stopped covering it. So we're going to talk about that extensively during the Like It or Not segment.
All right. So make sure you guys stick around for that. In the meantime, we're going to be switching gears here now. I want to give an update on the situation in Afghanistan. President Biden has addressed the nation following the withdrawal of all U.S. troops. Take a listen.
I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. Today, I've honored that commitment. It was time to be honest with the American people again. We no longer had a clear purpose in an open-ended mission in Afghanistan. After 20 years of war in Afghanistan, I refuse to send another generation of America's sons and daughters to fight a war that should have ended long ago. After more than $2 trillion spent in Afghanistan, the cost that researchers at Brown University estimated would be over $300 million a day for 20 years in Afghanistan, for 2 decades. If you take the number of 1 trillion, as many say, that's still $150 million a day for 2 decades. What have we lost as a consequence in terms of opportunities? I refuse to continue a war that was no longer in the service of the vital national interests of our people. And most of all, after 800,000 Americans serving in Afghanistan, I've traveled that whole country, brave and honorable service. After 20,744 American servicemen and women injured, and the loss of 2,461 American personnel, including 13 lives, lost just this week, I refuse to open another decade of warfare in Afghanistan. I was not going to extend this forever war, and I was not extending a forever exit. The decision to end the military airlift operations at Kabul airport was based on the unanimous recommendation of my civilian and military advisors, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and all the service chiefs, and the commanders in the field.
So President Biden there just affirming what he has been very consistent on where he stands with the war and the exit strategy. But there has been so much criticism. And when he breaks down the numbers, 150 million, between 150 and 300 million a day on war. Meanwhile, when I was in D.C., I'm seeing dozens of people sleeping in tents.
That's right.
We're seeing an issue with our infrastructure. We're seeing, the unemployment benefits for people who have lost their jobs due to COVID being minimized. We're seeing the moratoriums lifted. So all of that money, 150 to 300 million a day, could be going to rebuild our country, to build our country better. But yet and still, there are people in this nation who feel like we should have stayed and we should have continued to put 150 to 300 million dollars a day at a war that really, what were we still staying there for?
This is a big one for me to bite off, but I hope you guys can stick with me. We know that colloquialism in the African American community where you'll do something strange for a little change. I want you to now take that phenomenon and apply $2 trillion divided up between 5 companies. 5 companies who have investments in the media that pay commercial breaks for the news, who is able to manufacture the consent that is necessary to maintain a war for 2 decades. Now, what do you think people would do for a little change to the tune of 5 companies divvying up $2 trillion? And those 5 companies are right there in Virginia. The military industrial complex will keep us at war forever because, well, they'll do a little something strange for some change.
And so the question is, where do we go from here?
No more war. Period. No more sending our sons, daughters, non-gender conforming individuals into another place where we now become an occupying force, where we are expressing the height of barbarity through the barrel of our weapons and the missiles of our drones. No more. I mean, what amount of poverty could we have conquered with that kind of money? $300 million a day. I would say we could eradicate poverty in a matter of days. But they are more interested in dividing this money up amongst a handful of bloodthirsty warmongers who live amongst us, but you'll never see them, but you see their product every single day on mainstream media. Reject the narrative that we must continuously and perpetually be at war. That's what we have.
And you know, the last thing I'll throw at you, Ben, is with Biden. What he said there is he wasn't going to continue the forever war or the forever exit. Does that mean that we're done launching airstrikes in retaliation for those last 3 attacks? Or do you think that U.S. military forces is going to respond at least one more time for those last 3 attacks that claimed the life of 13 U.S. servicemen?
You know, I think it depends on when those corporations that are receiving the money that is attached to every drone and every missile, it depends on if they've closed out their quarter. If they've closed out their quarter, maybe we can have some peace, because peace in this country is dependent on the quarterly profit margins of about 5 companies in Virginia.
Well, that is all I have for this morning. I do have a little one here who had some things to say. Do you want to say your chant? No justice, no peace? Mm-hmm. Let's hear it.
Not justice, not peace.
That's
not
right.
Justice, not peace. Not justice, not peace.
All right. We will see you tomorrow. Stick around. We have Chuck Mariano coming up and more on The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Hey, do you love a good story? Great. Then you got to check out the #Storytime podcast. Each episode brings you the craziest, creepiest, and cringiest stories from YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, and beyond.
I'm gonna die. Chad could already be dead, or either he was smart and didn't come down anyways.
So at a quick glance, when I was turning off the light, I saw this thing in my kitchen, and it was kind of peeping out over to me.
Question is, name something that everyone knows the size of on their body.
Look, the internet is a dumpster full of stories, and I, your host, Will McFadden, dive in head first, sift through the flaming trash, and bring you nothing but treasures.
I was like, oh, right. That would be a really bad way to tell somebody that their brother died.
I swear this happened in slow motion. The champagne flute fell into the lap of Halle Berry, completely drenching her.
Listen to all 21 episodes of #Storytime now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Every day you're asked to give away personal information online, but you could be giving up some safety too. Now it's easy to help protect yourself. Norton 360 with LifeLock gives you device security, a VPN for Wi-Fi activity privacy, and identity theft protection. No one can prevent all identity theft, but you can opt in to cyber safety. Join this week. It's the flash sale. Save up to 45% off your first year at norton.com/news. Sale ends September 7th.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Unfortunately, I have to shift my joy to disappointment. But not surprise. I am not surprised with what happened overnight with the Supreme Court because, well, when Amy Coney Barrett was appointed, when Brett Kavanaugh was appointed, and when Neil Gorsuch was appointed by Donald Trump, we knew that this was going to happen. I want to begin, and this is from the ACLU breaking overnight. The Supreme Court has not responded to our emergency request to block Texas's radical new 6-week abortion ban, SB 8. The law now takes effect. Access to almost all abortion has just been cut off for millions of people. The impact will be immediate and devastating. The law bans abortion as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy, before many people even know they're pregnant. The result is that many Texans will be forced to carry pregnancies against their will. Private individuals, including anti-abortion activists with no connection to patients, can now sue anyone. If you're thinking, well, Ben, why do I care about this? Because this is not an issue that I don't know why this would not be an issue that you would be concerned about. But the next part right here is the kicker. Private citizens, including anti-abortion activists with no connection to patients, can now sue anyone who they believe is providing abortion or assisting someone in accessing abortion after 6 weeks. The law doesn't just allow these lawsuits. Here's the kicker. It doesn't just allow these lawsuits. It actively encourages private individuals to act as bounty hunters by awarding them with at least $10,000 if they are successful. This is a quote from CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky. Universal. We'll get to that in a second. I just want to absolutely highlight the nefarious nature of the intentions of this bill in Texas. And by passing on this, by punting on it, by not responding, the Supreme Court has effectively ended abortions in the state of Texas. And so goes Texas, so goes the rest of the country. We're going to talk about this more throughout the week because this is happening in real time. But this is the result of the election of Donald Trump. And no matter how against abortions somebody may be as an individual, because there's plenty of religious people who are not, and non-religious people who are simply opposed to abortions. That is whatever your prerogative may be. But we can most certainly say that this bill is not meant to do anything but to be punitive against people. And and I got to make one more distinction here, because the people who can afford to leave Texas will be able to get abortions. The people who cannot afford to leave Texas will not. You do the math. I want to go back to Afghanistan for a moment before we look at a couple of videos from Right Wing Watch. I want to flesh this out a little bit because I called it yesterday, and it's not to say I told you so, but it is to say that I had every expectation that Joe Biden was going to be his curmudgeonly self. And quite right. And I loved it, every bit of it, because we should have this type of visceral reaction with regard to war in the first place. The type of demeanor that Joe Biden had bringing us out of war last night, which I applaud, and he should be applauded for. Let's keep that same energy when somebody else mentions the idea of us going to war. I want to play that clip again. Here's Joe Biden last night vehemently explaining why he is not going to apologize for withdrawing from Afghanistan. Let's take a look at it.
I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. Today, I've honored that commitment. It was time to be honest with the American people again. We no longer had a clear purpose in an open-ended mission in Afghanistan. After 20 years of war in Afghanistan, I refused to send another generation of America's sons and daughters to fight a war that should have ended long ago. After more than $2 trillion spent in Afghanistan, a cost that researchers at Brown University estimated would be over $300 million a day for 20 years in Afghanistan, for 2 decades. If you take the number of 1 trillion, as many say, that's still $150 million a day for 2 decades. What have we lost as a consequence in terms of opportunities? I refuse to continue a war that was no longer in the service of the vital national interests of our people. And most of all, after 800,000 Americans serving in Afghanistan, I've traveled that whole country, brave and honorable service. After 20,744 American servicemen and women injured, and the loss of 2,461 American personnel, including 13 lives, lost just this week, I refuse to open another decade of warfare in Afghanistan. I was not going to extend this forever war, and I was not extending a forever exit. The decision to end the military airlift operations at Kabul airport was based on the unanimous recommendation of my civilian and military advisors, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and all the service chiefs, and the commanders in the field.
Again, this is the time that we should applaud Joe Biden, because he got this right. Because there is no way, there's no pleasant way to wage a war, let alone end a war that lasted 2 decades to the tune of $2 trillion that went to about 5 companies. I want to make sure that everyone understands that it's not the government of the United States. It's not the tax coffers that receives the profits of war. They're billionaires in their industries, in the military industrial complex. And they're mad. You better believe their money has been cut off. Well, not all of it, but a portion of it has been cut off. And now people are asking, well, why is Joe Biden mad? Why is Joe Biden mad? Why are you not mad? Well, this is a clip from CBS News senior White House correspondent Ed O'Keefe asking White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about Biden's mood during the Afghanistan speech today. Who is he mad at? I would posit that he's mad at warmongers, but I digress. Let's run the clip.
He seemed angry at the beginning of the speech today. Who's he mad at?
I would say I'll give you a different assessment of what I saw, which is that he gave a forceful assessment, laid out a forceful case to the American people as to why it was time to wind down a 20-year war that has led to the loss of thousands of lives. And in his view, and I think he made a firm case of this, it's not in our national security interest to be on the ground anymore.
It is not in our interest to be on the ground anymore. I would suggest that it's not in our interest to go back to any war, period. Period. I'm sorry, I'm not concerned about the demeanor of the president of the United States as it pertains to how we get out of war. He could have yelled. He could have thrown a shoe. I really don't care what he did in that moment in terms of his demeanor, because the thing that we should be angry at is war. Maybe let me draw one connection before I move on. And I have a clip from Tucker Carlson as it pertains to this. We'll listen to it and obviously unpack his lies and propaganda. But seriously, think about this from the perspective of the black community. You want to know why there are tanks rolling down the street of Ferguson? Like tanks, Humvees. They get all the toys that are built for the imperialism arm of the United States of America, donated to the police state. I forgot the name of the program. I'm thinking the program, the Pentagon program that literally takes all of the excess military weapons and machines that they have no more use for on the fields of Afghanistan, Iraq, and whatever war we happen to be in, or whatever military occupation the United States is engaged in, we take the excesses from it and we ship it to Black communities and poor communities. Why do you think your police officer doesn't look like officer friendly? They look more like a stormtrooper from Star Wars. That's because they have toys to play with now. And you, the Black community, well, we're the experimentation ground for all of the toys that were no longer in use in the Middle East. Tucker Carlson is mad about it. And, well, like to hear it. Here it goes.
The Sacramento Bee has just reported that at least 24 students enrolled in the San Juan Unified School District in the state of California are stranded somewhere in Afghanistan tonight. No one's certain where they are or how they're going to get home. The White House hasn't bothered to comment despite being asked. What's so interesting, the contrast that informs us really, is that over the past week, this same administration has overseen the evacuation of tens of thousands of unvetted Afghan nationals, many of whom will now be moved into neighborhoods around the United States and stay permanently. They didn't seem to encounter any problems in doing this. Thanks to meticulous and thoughtful planning, Operation Change America Forever came off precisely according to plan. It worked flawlessly. But a couple of dozen American school kids trapped in Afghanistan, the White House isn't really interested in what happens to them.
The White House is not really interested in what happens to them because the White House didn't even know they existed last week. Let's be sure. When Jen Psaki was asked about it, the White House was like, what? That's because chances are I'm going to venture to say, and if I'm wrong, I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong and I'll eat my words. These are not students. Because why in the entire green earth would you take students into a war zone? See, they require for this system to be maintained, it requires a level of stupidity and ignorance and intentional obtuseness to ignore the obvious in front of you. What parents are going to sign a permission slip to send their children to Afghanistan? Again. And even the families that went, even the what decent. Now, there is one possibility. Because we are living in the age of irrationality, we are dealing with parents who would rather put their children at risk of catching COVID-19 than to get the vaccine. So it is very possible that there are some parents who, for whatever reason, would, but absolutely, the questions that have to be asked and whether or not the White House knew about it and how they got there. Those are all things that have to be discussed and found out. But hey, Tucker, guess what? The situation at hand is that the president of the United States has made the call to get us out of war. And whereas you have pretended for many months, for many years, Tucker, you have pretended to be against war. And now you're finding every possible excuse that you can to undermine the winding down of this war. If those families were foolish enough, and I'm going to say it, if those families were foolish enough to get over there with their children, then let's get them home and make sure that those children never have to deal with parents who are foolish enough to send them into a war zone. I just have a hard time believing that any parent would be that reckless with their children. But then again, look at what's happening in this country as it pertains to COVID-19. I want to skip a little bit and go down to a couple of stories, a couple of videos from these right-wing pastors that we have to keep an eye on. I want to expose. See, there's something that happens when you expose something that's hidden in the dark. And to be quite honest with you, these pastors want to be famous. The reason that these pastors are all over the internet saying these things that are so ridiculous is because they have discovered that this is their pathway to prosperity. Right. This is their pathway to getting an appointment at a preaching booking at a big evangelical church. Right. Let's be sure they know what they are doing. And since they want to be famous, well, let's put them up on the screen and let's discuss the illogical fallacies of the intentional obtuseness of these right wing pastors, starting with Jack Hibbs, who used his Sunday morning sermon to claim that the U.S. has suffered its worst military defeat in history when it withdrew from Afghanistan and demanded that Biden be court-martialed and removed from office. Let's take a look at that clip.
God's wrath is upon America. It took us 20 years of blood, trillions of dollars in treasure. It took us 20 years to lose the war on terror. This week, the United States suffered its worst military defeat in its history. Do not call for the recall and do not call for the impeachment of Joe Biden. That's not appropriate. It's inappropriate. The number one military officer in the United States of America is the commander-in-chief. Did you know that? The number one soldier, the number one airman, the number one presider over the U.S. military, the number one government-issued leader of the U.S. military is the President of the United States. When a commander conducts orders that are irresponsible and leads to death or jeopardizes national security, that military person faces court-martial. Joe Biden needs to be facing court-martial. He needs to be tried for his actions. Joe Biden has committed a crime. And in military law, he's to be removed from office.
It's fascinating to me what passes for intelligence on that side of the equation first. Secondly, COVID-19 would like to have a word with you, Pastor, and your audience. The Delta variant has entered the chat. Last but not least, do you notice who they consider to be actual sentient beings alive? He has no regard for the decisions that were made by George W. Bush and all of the subsequent presidents that extended and persisted this and made this war persist. Nor does he have any regard for the lives of all of the Afghans who died. He's just really concerned about the lives that he could use as a cudgel against Joe Biden. That's it. Did he mention any life? Did he mention any troop? Did he mention any, except the troops that died in the last, but he didn't mention any of the troops that died during the watch of George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, all the troops. And then not only does he not mention those troops, because those troops' lives are inconvenient for the narrative that he needs to push right now that would get him an applause in his pulpit right now because he didn't prepare any other sermon. So he needs something that's going to give him an applause line, and that's Donald Trump. I'm sorry, that's Joe Biden. That's Joe Biden, because church in America is no longer about faith. It's about the politics of the Republican Party. I don't even know what this next clip is, David. Drop the next clip, and I'm sure it's a right. We're pulling this from all these right-wing pastors. Because this is what's being taught in their services every Sunday morning, while they will convince black preachers that the only thing you can preach about is prosperity. Let's take a look at the next clip.
Genocide, Mark. There have been vaccines that have been taken off the market with just 50 deaths. How many thousands have we had die from this vaccine already? A ton. A ton. We're not going to really even know. And they're hiding that number. They're hiding that number. The CDC's hiding that number. Yeah. And they can't even get their narrative right, Mark. One day the vaccine saves you. The other day they're saying even with the vaccine you're not safe. Then they're saying a booster shot in September. Then they told us for a year that the mask helped us, and now that don't even matter. And now they're even coming out and saying you still got to wear a mask to have a vaccine. They can't even get their own lie straight. I told my middle son this because he was debating about the vaccine, and I was saying don't get it. I said anytime the government is telling you to get something, that's when you need to stop and run and go the other way about 100,000 miles an hour. That's right. And I said, when they're trying to censor people from telling you not to get it, I said, that should tell you all you need to know about what they're trying to give you, son.
Now, that voice that you just heard on the, if you're watching, it was the voice on the right of the screen. If you're listening, this is a clip from anti-vax conspiracy theorist Chris McDonald. And I believe, I want to make sure I get this one right, because he was asking David for prayers for his father, because after this clip came out, his father got infected with COVID-19. And then 2 weeks later, he announced that his father had died of COVID-19. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. Help me, David, because I don't really feel like I have a sense of empathy for people who are advocating against vaccines, and then when their families. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a human and I want to show compassion, but it's a little hard for me. David, break this one down for me.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, no. His father passed away before this. This was just, I believe,
this is yesterday. After his father passed away.
Yes. So he had a whole clip just I think it was like 2 weeks to a month ago, where he asked for prayers because his father had COVID and he was having trouble breathing. He was in the hospital, etc. Obviously an older man, because you can see how old this guy is, but he had COVID. He posted to social media that his father passed like a week or two later, and now this.
His father is barely in the ground. I think we really honestly, and not to sound dramatic, folks, but we really have to take in consideration that we are not dealing with rational actors. There's a fundamental principle across all of our social sciences that says that we can make predictions about what will happen if we take in consideration that the people involved are rational actors. At what point will we accept that we're not dealing with rational actors? These are people who are arguing for the opportunity to infect their children with COVID-19. And they expect us to recognize their liberty to do so, because it is more important for them to have the most perverted expression of liberty, which is the liberty to harm other people. And there was this libertarian-esque idea of, your rights stopping at your nose and you don't have a right to harm anyone else. But now we're literally in a phase of human devolution where we have on the national stage a political apparatus that is advocating for the opportunity to not only kill themselves, but kill their children through the Delta variant. I think it's reasonable for us to assume that we're no longer dealing with rational actors. All right, another clip. Prophet Jeff Jansen said that the military would reinstall Trump by the end of April. When that didn't happen, he moved that date to June. That also, of course, didn't happen. But Jansen continues to insist that Trump is still president and he's going to step back in. You just watch what happens. The big lie is now being sustained by thousands and thousands of pastors and right-wing conspiracy theorists and QAnonists who are all perpetuating their small portion of the big lie. Let's take a look at this clip.
Prophets are being tested is what's going on, because everybody stood with their word with President Trump. But how many are actually standing right now with President Trump? I am. I'm not backing up. Things have shifted and things have changed. But look, he's still president and he's going to step back in. You watch what happens. Very few are standing there right now. And I get ridiculed. I'm sure I'll get all kinds of emails about this. You probably will too, Darren. Sorry about that. Yeah. And I'll continue to stand. It's not my word. It's the word of the Lord. It's not Jeff Jansen's
the thing.
Word.
You put the word out there. Can I ask you, when you get a word and you got a word about Donald Trump, how did that word come?
I saw it more than I heard it.
How did you see it?
I saw it in the spirit. I had dreams about President Trump. He's God's man, flat out. It lined up with Kim Clement's prophecy, a tale of two presidents. I got a download from the Holy Spirit.
I got a download from the Holy Spirit. I see so many different power dynamics on this clip. If you're not watching and you're listening, it is a power dynamic of wealth versus not as wealthy. And the man who's talking about he got a vision from God is the one whose background looks far more lavish. There's a power dynamic there because there is that undue influence of all of these conservative radio hosts and wannabe hosts and YouTubers who need access to power and economics. Really being led to their own slaughter on behalf of the people who have money enough to fund their operations. Simply put, If you take this relationship that you see on your screen to the logical conclusion, you will see wealthy donors and conservative hosts like Phil Valentine, who believed what their wealthy donor said and believed it even unto death. Phil Valentine is dead now of COVID-19, but this one is overlapping with the big lie. Why is the Venn diagram between those who believe the big lie and those who oppose mask mandates and oppose the vaccine? Why is it that Venn diagram is perfectly overlapped with conservative evangelicals, particularly white conservative evangelicals? That's because they have cultivated their own trifecta, their own unholy trinity: bigotry, the rejection of knowledge, greed. That's where they are. Bigotry, the rejection of knowledge, and greed. That is the unholy trinity of the conservative movement. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, our sister from another mister, Rebecca Azor, is going to join us. We'll be speaking with Chuck Modiano about all of the protests that he's been covering. We have clips, we have videos, we have Black Joy. We have it all here at the Benjamin Dixon Show. Like it or not, it's coming up next. We'll be right back.
Minutes into hours into day. I'm thinking about the situation.
When you get Xfinity Internet, Flex is included free. And finding what to watch on TV is now as easy as popcorn. Show me my favorites. Yes, live soccer. This is how easy it is to find my favorite content, all in one place. And for Xfinity Internet customers, it all starts at free with Xfinity Flex. This is a way better way to watch.
Learn how to get a great offer on Xfinity Internet. Plus, add a free Flex 4K streaming box. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Restrictions apply.
Is it time for a new heating and cooling system? Turn to the experts at Griffith Energy Services and Carrier today and get 0% financing for 18 months on a new heating and cooling system. Get the comfort you deserve from Griffith Energy Services and Carrier. Visit griffitenergyservices.com today for this and other exclusive offers. That's griffitenergyservices.com. License number MDHVACR 01-2278.
Griffith Energy Services. Doggone dependable.
At Simple Mobile, you get the no contract advantage. Those other mobile companies make you think you're in control, but you're really not. Simple Mobile is different. You can get a powerful nationwide 5G network all without a contract. It's the reliability you need when you need it, with no mystery fees, no activation fees, and no contract ever. Simple Mobile. Out with the old, in with the simple. 5G capable device and SIM required. Actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary. 5G network not available in all areas. 5G upload speeds not yet available.
Told my babies I'll be homeless, so don't stay up. Breaks my heart to see them sad, so I won't.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. That's you gotta have to have that, you know, that morning.
Good morning, good morning. Well, either way we do it. Welcome to Like It or Not, where we're free to tell the truth. Where we're free to tell the truth.
Oh, and not care who doesn't like it. I had to adjust my camera because my head was small, right? And yours was in the frame like that. I had to fix it.
Rebecca, how you doing, sis? We missed you yesterday.
Yeah, I'm doing good, actually. I'm doing better than I'm doing very well.
Good,
I'm grateful that God has really blessed me. And he literally... Because, you know, I told you guys about how a while back, I told you guys how I was set to go to the doctors and get my checkup to see if I still have any cancerous cells. So the cancerous cells are almost undetectable. And that to me is a great, great start. And I'm very happy for just that testimony, because the nights I cried, the days I cried, the weeks I cried, the pain I went through from the multiple surgeries. God has been really good to me thus far. And I thank you guys for just assistance and your prayers and everything. You know, and a lot of you guys that have been rolling with me since the beginning of Like It or Not back in 2017. You guys know the story. You guys have been rocking with me since then. You guys have been asking me how I've been doing, you know, medical leave wise or whatever they call it. But God has been good. And I am because I eventually I want kids and stuff. So to know that I'm well
big,
on my way.
Long head, big head babies around there speaking Creole.
Speaking Creole, big cheeks, almond eyes. I don't know what the teeth is going to look like. God, let it be the father's teeth. It's just God bless my kids, man. I don't know. But when I do, I can't wait to start to meet someone and start a family. I'm looking forward to that eventually.
And you can't say that kind of stuff on the internet because your DMs are about to be full.
That's okay. My DMs are open. Feel free. Jump in.
Slide in. Slide in there. Well, it's good to see you. And then also just an update on the work that you're doing with your brother and all the different organizations that are connected to Haiti in the aftermath of the earthquake, which is in the aftermath of the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. There's just so much going on. Just update us on everything as briefly or as long as you need to.
Yeah, I definitely forgot yesterday to drop you some new footage my brother sent me that I wanted to show you guys the tents along Jérémie, which is in the southern part of Haiti, which was affected. But my brother, who is an activist in Haiti, he's a popular activist, and my oldest brother, and he's also a popular rapper in Haiti, and his name is Pasito. And he goes back all the time, even though he just moved here about, I think like 8 years ago. He never really stayed here. He keeps going back. He has a home there. He takes care of his kids there, just a lot, and he goes back all the time to give no matter what. He was in the last earthquake. And he was one of the people that was walking around helping people, even though his stuff was messed up. And this time around, he was able to gather with us, our family members, and partner with another organization called Bompas in Haiti. So got some stuff here, flew it out to Haiti, has been there weekly. The man I'm telling you, he moved here, but he hates America. He's in Haiti weekly. He does not like it here. He doesn't believe in the work ethic. He just does not like America. But he goes back often, and he went to Jérémie, and was giving. Yeah, Jérémie is where my father is from. And he's giving back. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot for him to be able, even though there was so much that he gave. If you see the communities of people,
there's a lot of people in need.
There was so much, there was so many people. And that to me spoke a lot. He sent me the videos, and I'll send you, this is not the videos but I'll send you guys again the videos, the updated videos that he just sent me yesterday night, because you guys will be shocked to see the tents along the road. They're not even tents, y'all. It's like 2 sticks put together and a sheet of cloth or some newspaper covering it.
That's where people are living.
That's how people are living currently. Before that, they didn't even have great housing. So now whatever they had, whatever structure they had, that was not up to code because governments weren't giving a damn. The government there wasn't giving a damn. It is ridiculous. And the weather, I'm like, this ain't stopping no rain. This ain't stopping the sun that may be beating down. This ain't stopping nothing. Imagine the babies. Imagine the elderly. Imagine the people who are sick. Imagine, people who can't walk. Some of them had to be left behind for people to move forward out of those areas that just are not livable right now. So, but shout out to my brother. Shout out to you guys for assisting and helping. Because of you, that was something that I was able to contribute to for my brother, and because of you right here in Atlanta at the Legacy Center at ATL for Haiti, I was able to give as well. And my plans this week is to go out, if my job permits, to go out and work with them for either the Friday or the weekend to help them out and volunteer to put stuff into the bins. They have so many bins, barrels, as you guys say in English, to fill. I mean, huge barrels to fill. And I feel like because Haiti may not be in the news cycle anymore, it's something that's forgettable. And I don't want it to be that way. And maybe I'm biased because I'm Haitian and I'm going to rock with mine and I'm going to stick right beside them. And you're going to hear about it any chance you get right here on the show. But there are barrels that need to be filled. And if you can't give, and if you're not okay with giving monetarily to my Cash App, that's okay. I'm okay with that. They have Amazon links that you can click on that will send directly over to Haiti on behalf of ATL for Haiti. There's so much that you can do to give back. And, you know, whatever, if you have questions, by the end of the show, we'll put back up the link with the information that you can actually send yourself, like make a package yourself, send it to the Legacy Center, and it'll get to Haiti. I promise you that. So,
yeah. And, yeah, you show we have the pictures. You know, it's difficult to do this kind of work when so many people have burned the roads and the bridges before us that make people really hesitant to donate money to individuals or to organizations. But I know you and I know your work, and I've seen the pictures. We've seen the pictures. We got video, and there's just so much more that we could do. And I am grateful that we have somebody, we say Pasito, who is so rooted in the community that we know it's getting to the people versus going to some organization like the Red Cross. So thank you all. Thank you. I know you're thanking us, but thank you and your brother for what y'all are doing there.
Yeah.
Let's jump here, Rebecca, and you're gonna go get them headphones that we sent you and bring in Chuck Modiano, who has been covering the protests that have occurred nonstop. Brother Chuck, welcome back to the show, first and foremost. But secondly, tell us about the continued protests that are happening out in D.C.
Well, it's been going on nonstop. First of all, sending love, not just to everyone in Louisiana, but love in Haiti. And I caught the end. I want to make sure, Rebecca, are you all any friends, family, everybody okay?
Thank you so much. They're displaced. I mean, but they're living. And my brother, like I said, my oldest brother is able to go out there and check on our people. And we're able to at least get a phone call, you know, every now and then. And so that to me, because some people's families didn't make it. So I'm grateful to say that mine did, you know, so yeah.
That is definitely good to hear.
Thank you, Chuck.
Shifting gears. Yeah, there's been all types of protests. So, I mean, I'll go back to last Thursday night. Antoine Gilmore in D.C. was the latest individual in D.C. to get murdered by police. So there were protests here in D.C. on his murder. That was Thursday. On Friday was the 11th straight week of Boycott Nelly's protest, a racist bar in D.C. that protesters are trying to close down. Then we moved to Saturday. Saturday was a march in Washington. So there were a whole bunch of different types of marches on Saturday. The one I chose to attend, where there were over 200 families, really close to 300 families in Washington, D.C., who had their loved ones murdered by police. And for hours, each one of them told their story. And it was heart-wrenching. It was very tough to be at, tough to listen to. And that went on for hours, and that was hidden. There wasn't a lot of media there. So that was an issue. And then we come to Saturday night, on the second Antoine Gilmore protest, which people are looking at right now, where people came back out on the streets. And there are going to be continued protests for Antoine Gilmore so that there can be accountability for the police officer, something that never happens in D.C. And then we moved to Sunday. There was a big HBCU march calling on the cancellation of student debt, calling on the transformation of curricula in high schools that are whitewashing history. So there's a lot going on all in consecutive days.
And you got so we're looking at the clip now of the marching ensemble. So I know